Did FSU football quit on Saturday night in the second half against SMU? Is Norvell in danger of losing the team in general, or the administrative support that he has, or the booster support that he has? Richie and I are going to talk about that in today's video presented by BetUS. Richie, Florida State is broken right now. I mean, there's really no doubts about that. How much of a concern do you have around Mike Norvell losing this team quitting on Mike Norvell here in this 2024 season?
So I am a little concerned. Not to name names, but we all know who they are. You know, you've had multiple players that have kind of, held you hostage almost in a holdout form where they said they threatened to transfer unless they got more money from NIL. Those are the type of guys you have, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. Get what you're worth, get your money. But how invested are you in the program if, multiple years in a row, certain individuals have done that? I would hope, because you do have a lot of prospective NFL talent on this team still, which makes this season even all that more frustrating. You would hope they play for tape, play for the film, put it on for the scouts to watch. But I do question, we talked about, I think this team is not very mentally strong. I think they're pretty mentally weak, and we'll see. I think there's a chance you could lose the locker room this year. If you get embarrassed by Clemson, which is a very good possibility, and then, a few weeks later, Miami embarrasses you as well. Even if Florida's a really bad team with an interim coach, are you really picking them to beat Florida at that point? Because I just don't think this team has the magic we saw last year is so special, which is why we should appreciate it so much. But that doesn't translate year to year typically, and it certainly has not translated this year. So I do think there's a chance that you lose the team this year and lose the locker room, because nobody likes losing. My junior year in high school, we went 0-10. By literally week 7, 8 of practice, I'm telling all my friends, I'm like, I'm not coming back next year. I'm not playing football again. I'm going to basketball. Maybe I was mentally weak at the time, which is fine. I just think, losing, nothing good happens with losing. So we'll see what happens. But I think there's a decent chance he loses it. And what more importantly, he cannot lose the support of the administration. I think Michael Alford will stick with him no matter what, at least currently, heading into next year. But you start losing the donors and the people that are essentially paying Mike Norvell's salary. Yeah, that could happen. It really could.
We'll get right back to our conversation, but first, make sure that you're betting with BetUS this year. There are a ton of fun games right now, and the lines at BetUS are phenomenal. I know it's not going great for our Noles, but listen, I had an issue the other day with something on BetUS. I reached out, and they fixed it immediately for me. Their live chat is great. Their customer service is great. You can use our code right now, YouTube150, to get a 150% deposit bonus up to, well, that's on your first deposit. It's up to $2,000 total. Your second and third deposits are at the 125% deposit bonus level. So make sure you're doing more with your first one so that you get more of a bonus back. I've heard from several of you. I know you guys are signing up. I've gotten several DMs asking, hey, is this real? Can you do it? I have done this. I've personally signed up. I've shown you guys as my tickets and stuff. Go sign up for BetUS. You will not be disappointed. Appreciate them for their support. Yeah, so I want to talk about that. But speaking about the team specifically, yeah, I think they'll probably come out. And so kind of like we talked about earlier, I think they'll probably come out and start games well-ish, right? Like I think they'll get hyped, even this weekend, right? And we're all frustrated and, nobody likes what's going on right now. I understand all that. But even this weekend, it'll be 7 p.m., like, it's still cool to see a full Doak Campbell. It's still cool to see a night game. It's still cool to see Osceola and Renegade. Like, people still get into it, right? And so, it'll start fine. But they're mentally weak. We talked about this. They're going to get punched. Like, Clemson's going to punch them in the mouth. And they're going to do something, whether that's a pick or whether that's a fumble or whether that's going down and scoring and Cade going off because we can't stop anybody that, runs faster than DJU. Something's going to happen in this game. And I worry about it just snowballing again. I worry about it just being an absolute embarrassment. I think Clemson's going to name their score. And so I don't know if they'll just like, because I do think that if Norvell notices like guys have like quit, I do think he'll move on from them. I think he'll bring in other guys to like he'll bench guys. He's not afraid to bench guys. He benched Shaheem for the DUI stuff, whatever. Like I think if they quit, like he'll say like, all right, you're out, like see ya. But I do think like game to game, like it's going to be like, yeah, like it once, I mean, I can't believe Clemson's only a 2-touchdown favorite. Well, once Clemson gets up by 2 or 3 touchdowns, which is kind of what I suspect to happen, right? I hope it doesn't, but that's what I kind of expect. Once that happens, like, are you confident that they don't just absolutely mail it in and say like, hey, I'm not busting my butt to lose by 28 points anyway. Like, who cares? But then talking about what you're talking about, I spoke with, so I support where I can, and I give to the Battles End monthly, and I give to the boosters monthly, and I try to support, right, and try and be a good fan. I'll say it's not a ton, right? Like I don't have I'm not loaded over here. I'm sitting here making YouTube videos for a living, but I try to give where I can. I spoke with some people that like give significantly more than I do. And they're telling me, like, talking on the drive on the way back today, I had to drive to Nashville from Tuscaloosa, and I had to, then get to Tampa from Orlando. So I was in the car for like 5 hours. And so I was on the phone a little bit today and asking people, and they were just like, yeah, I don't feel like going this weekend. And I'm talking like, not like, your $1 million boosters, but like Golden Chief and above, Golden Chief, a couple Platinum Chiefs. Like, yeah, I don't feel like going this weekend. People that are just like giving large amounts of money to Florida State, like not like the low stuff, right? Where I'm at, like they're giving a lot of money to FSU, and they're like, yeah, it's not enjoyable. Like, I'd rather just spend time with my grandkids, or I'd rather spend, I had somebody tell me I'd rather spend time with my grandkids this weekend. Like, I don't want to go to that. I'll watch it on TV and flip back and forth between other games, but like, I don't want to drive 5-6 hours to a game, spend a bunch of money, and watch them get their heads beat in. Like, if it was going to be a competitive game, like, sure, that's fine. I understand that we're not as good this year. That's fine. But like, Clemson's going to name their score. And that's, again, if you don't lose the locker room, or if you do lose the locker room, either way, you're starting to lose some of that fan support. Now, I don't know what the fan support is at that high level, right? Like where it's like the people they honor down on the field, right? Like the big time donors. But I don't think it's good. I don't think anybody feels real confident or comfortable about it. And yeah, if he starts to lose some of that donor support, again, it's not really feasible for anything to happen this year. But I do worry about just apathy setting into this program. What's that then do for the boosters? What's that then do for the Battles End? I mean, the Battles End is probably already bleeding right now from people canceling and saying like, dude, this is entertainment for me. Like, this is like, I do this because I enjoy what Saturdays look like. Well, I'm not enjoying what Saturdays look like. Like, I'm not going to continue to pay you. And I'm not telling people to cancel. I'm not, like, mine's still going through, but like, why, I do think that there's a level of like, but why am I supporting this if it's so bad? Like, why am I putting you wouldn't put your entertainment dollars into a bad movie. You would, like continue to go back. You wouldn't put your entertainment dollars into like if Netflix took all the new shows off, right? Like you would stop supporting that. And so I hope people aren't doing that, but I understand why they are. And so, well, then your budget for that gets even lower. And then your budget for other things gets even lower. And so, yeah, I mean, you're losing the locker room, you're losing the fan base, you're losing the support. And then, you mentioned Alford. I don't think that Alford's having like the conversation of like, hey, you're about to get fired with him or anything like that. But I do think he's having the conversation of like, hey, you make changes or it's going to be your butt on the line. And so like, I believe that probably a little nicer than that. Like, I think they're buddies. And I think ultimately the Norvell hire and Norvell being a coach that Alford's extended several times. Like, I know he didn't hire him, but like Norvell being a coach he's extended, it ultimately falls on him too. But I do think that Alford, like he's losing. I mean, easy question, softball question. Well, the answer might not be, but the question is easy to ask. How much does 1 out of 10? How much does Alford regret the extension in January?
I I think Heath is more of a big picture thinker. So I'd say fairly low, maybe a 3 or 4, but he definitely wants to see changes. And I think that could go as high as an 8 or a 9 by this time next year. But I think right now he's I think he was fairly confident in the decision. And if you're to believe that, Alabama was, you know, potentially trying to poach Norvell, which there are credible reports from the national writers, not FSU media, not the FSU beat, national writers that they were down to Norvell or DeBoer. I'm sure they're happy they have DeBoer right now, but you had to pay the man, and he used the leverage, and I don't think he regrets it just yet, but I think there's definitely cause for concern.
So you had, I'll disagree with this some, and no inside information. Like I talk with Mike at times, and so like I haven't asked him this, and I don't, certainly don't text people like after losses like yesterday and ask what their thoughts are on big decisions they've made. So no inside info here. I'll disagree. I'll say that it's probably like 7 or 8 if I had to guess, like a high level of regret. And here's why: you had Norvell locked up anyway. Now if he'd have taken the Bama job, hindsight being 2020, I mean, would we be like? This is a crazy thing about. Would we be 1-4 with a different coach? Like who? I don't know who we would have gotten, but would we be 1-4 with a different coach? Like a coach that would have brought in probably some of his portal guys. What if it had been somebody like a Splash? I don't know.
Probably not, because Florida State. If you had paid a new coach, which you are now paying Norvell is
you
what?
could have gotten anybody.
Yeah,
You could have gotten Lane. I don't know if Lane would have taken it, but you could have gotten Lane.
Lane would have come to Florida State.
Yes.
I think he's an SEC guy, but you could have got
And
Lane.
And
Granted,
you probably have Jackson Dart right now at quarterback, and you'd probably have all those transfers at. So now you might have lost to Kentucky
for a little cheaper.
So anyway, all that said, like I do think he regrets a little bit, because what I think happened. Now I think Norvell was absolutely a candidate. I think he was absolutely in the top 2. Was he number 1? Was he number 2? I don't know. It doesn't really matter to me. But you got Jimmy Sexton. You totally got taken for a ride by the slimiest, greasiest agent that ever existed,
Not the
who
first
is
time
laughing
either.
all the way to the bank. And so from that perspective only, and seeing what we've seen to start this year, and just seeing how things have turned out, and thinking it back through your mind, I think he says, shoot, why did I do that? Like, why? Like he was already on a really good deal. Like he was already going to get bumped after the 10-win season. And so to now owe $84 million, like an $84 million contract. And, in the moment, obviously we all celebrated it, because we never, when you go back and look at the, Richie, you go back and look at the articles from the extension, Florida State didn't even send out the buyout information for the contract extension, because there was no thought around that. Usually when a coach is first hired, you get both sides of that. But because we were in such a spot then, Florida State didn't even send that out when they sent out the press release. And so, yeah, like that was just in nobody's mind. But yeah, I would say he probably regrets it a little bit. I don't think he's lost Alfred yet. I will say that. I will agree with that. I do think Alfred is going to force some changes. Hopefully they're enough. I'll say this. No, let's say that for the next segment. Let's say that for another one. So if you're watching that clip of the video, you got to watch tomorrow's video too to hear what I was going to say. But yeah, losing the locker room, losing the fan base, losing administrative support. There are certainly worries around all 3 of those right now, and for really, really good reason, obviously. What are your thoughts? Let's talk about that down in the comments. Are you worried about the team quitting? Are you quitting on the team? Are you worried about donor support or the boosters quitting on Mike Norvell this year? Let's talk about that down below. I think it's a very real concern. Hopefully not something that happens, and I know it's going to be tough, but let's talk about it down below. Appreciate BetUS again for their support, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Go Noles.